This week on the show, we have power scaler, video editor, and writer, Crisis. And if you're enjoying the show and want to help support it, make sure to check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/KojimaFreak.
Every time I open up the notes, I see that gif of Kojima from the from the Majin Buu side.
He's so precious in that video. I mean, the whole thing is very clearly like, hey, we were at this like convention or this industry show, and we fucked around with developers, but all of them had brought their own sort of spirit bomb flavor, and Kojima's was the most adorable, obviously. So
that man lives out loud.
I've always wondered because I've been fans of Dragon Ball and Metal Gear for pretty much around the same amount of time, and I was always curious if there was any just curious if there was any crossover. Like, I wonder if he even knew what he was doing, or if he just knew Mega 64 told him to do it, and so he was just along for the ride.
His form's a little off, I'll say that, but
yeah, stiffen the elbows straight up, head down,
straighten those elbows. Yep.
Yeah.
Can we get him to do fusion with Suda 51?
I was just about to say, I'd love to see him do a fusion dance.
Oh my gosh, would it work, or would it be the skinny or the fat version? It's a botched fusion.
Is he supposed to look like that?
I guess so.
Do it with Kamiya.
Oh, Jesus.
And then they'd have to make a game.
Hey, I'm Fingers.
Yo, it's Apache Smash.
hey everyone, this is Days Ahead.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency.
I do like how in the GIF he's wearing like his own shirt with his birthday on it. There's something endearing and charming about that.
They made sure to get the Luden statue in there too.
Yeah, and the Luden statue. And now there's like a Luden statue on their vending machines in the office. And yeah, he's really been hitting off the branding.
The man's
days.
got good branding, yeah.
Why is it that Kojima can do the self-aggrandizing shtick and it comes off as kind of like adorable and endearing, but anybody else does it and you're like, oh, knock it off. Stop being so full of yourself.
I got a couple finger shirts. It's fine.
You're wearing both of them right now. Funnily enough.
Got a layer.
I got a Pink Floyd shirt on right now.
Yeah, I know Kevin Feige, the like Marvel guy. He wears every time he does something for press, he's wearing a hat of the thing he's talking about, but he'll always wear like a suit and tie with his like a baseball cap of like Spider-Man. And that's always been like, I don't know, I guess that's his thing. But
It's good for YouTube thumbnails, I guess.
yeah, you know exactly. You don't even have to put it in the title. You know exactly what he's talking about at all times.
It's like the new version of wearing like a t-shirt, like a blazer, jeans, and seeming like a hip professional.
Yeah. That's a hard line to walk, though, before it just seems kind of like, I don't know, silly. Like, do you want us to take you seriously? Are you like the cool hip guy? Or...
It's a fine line between, being comfortable and just trying to set a vibe at work and just coming off like a douchebag.
Yeah, fellow kid kind of thing.
Oh, most definitely.
Doing a welcome back Apache. We got Apache back on the show here.
Yeah, I'm still on the show. Woo! Yeah, I've not been here for the last 2 episodes. My bad, everyone.
He was on roller coasters.
Yeah, no, for real. I'm just obsessed with roller coasters now. That I don't know how that happened. Well, I kind of do. Limes made me go on them, even though I was scared.
You were on Mr. Bones' wild ride this whole time.
Basically, yeah.
You were scared of the roller coasters, and now you're afraid of your own obsession. When you really should have been scared about your own obsession.
Now I'm afraid of not being on roller coasters. But yeah,
Right.
I since being back in England, I've been to the amusement park, and I'm going back to one next Tuesday. So like, I don't know what's going on. Me and my sister have got plans to go to another park like in a few weeks or so. But yeah, like I missed the last 2 shows because I was in America, and then I came home and I moved house. So I'm back now. Woo!
And you were sick.
I was mega ill. Oh, I think I was like suffering from not having enough freedom. I had so much freedom when I was in the US, and then I came home, there was no freedom. But yeah, I got really ill when I came back. But I'm all
That
good.
makes one of us.
Oh no.
Now you're back in prime form. I mean, like 10 minutes before the recording started, you just like wrapped up a fucking world record for European Extreme Foxhound.
You're pretty good.
Yeah, it's I was saying for a while that I had like nothing to do with MGS3, and then Jack took my European Extreme record out of nowhere. I didn't even see him play, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Hey, I've got record." And then like I got into an event I'm going back to UKSG, which is on the ESA Marathon channel in September, which is in Glasgow. Can't wait to go back. So like I've got that to practice for. I had to get the record back, and I want to get back to doing blindfolded stuff. But like I just love the game again. I just want to play it all the time again. So I'm feeling good. I'm in a really good mood.
He's back.
So you managed to beat him at a world record, but between the two of you, who would win in a fight?
Oh my goodness.
Oh Jesus.
We got Crisis here today.
Let me get your stats. What are your feats? What have you done? Well, speaking of roller coasters and MGS3, I was recently at Disney, and I don't know if you guys have been there recently, but they have the whole Avatar world, and the whole time I saw the forest, this forest environment, and then they had one of the big mechs that, from my vague recollection of Avatar, the villain gets in at the end, and I had to take a picture of like, you know, my finger on my ear, like I was by Metal Gear and I was in the Selino Yarsk forest.
I just realized that you mean Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar.
Yes,
I was like, what mechs? Is he
He's
talking
like-
about Legend of Korra?
And he was like, oh, last Airbender roller coaster. Holy fuck! I'll be right back, guys.
I was like, that must have been season 4 or something. I don't know.
That's the comics, bro. I got to read everything. I got to get it all. Yeah.
Yeah, but who would win in a fight? The Avatar from Avatar or Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Is this the whole? Is this who would win?
I can't help it. Everyone gets to do it once, right?
You got it. That's the plot. Yeah, we get one each time.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
But yeah, Apache is like not the only person in the speedrunning community that's done some crazy stuff this week. D-Limes, GDQ was this week. And I know there was both like good and bad news from the MGS front. However, one of the great things to hear is D-Limes. Shout out to D-Limes. He hit the rank 1 big boss, one segment run. I hope Apache make sure I'm saying this right. In one whole segment, no saves, no continues. And now I think we have like, it looks like 5 MG games at GDQ that someone's done that for.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's happened in Solid 1, 2, and 3, and Metal Gear 1 and 2. So Jag tried his best with MGS4, but he lost it in the first, I think, 8 minutes of the run. There's like a really tough part at the start where you can lose it. But yeah, getting into the exclusive Rank 1 club is something that I really wanted to do. As we all know, that didn't happen. But yeah, it's a big deal whenever anyone can get the highest rank in a single segment run of the game. And the fact that it was on Game Over If Discovered as well, which is not what people normally play MGS2 on. That was something else to behold, and I commentated it too, so that was fun.
You were digitally commentating along with, I believe, I know there was Joseph's Joestar there, and then I'm sorry, who was the other person?
Metal Glenn Solid.
Oh,
Good tag,
right. Yeah,
good
yeah,
tag.
it is. And then Joe, we'll call out Joe as well. Stoic as fuck with his. I know he was having some nerves with going to GDQ. I think for his first time.
Yeah,
he was stoic as fuck during his MG run.
yeah. I think Joe is like anyone who knows him. Like he's not gonna like dive into a huge social situation like GDQ with ease. But when he sat down to do his run, you couldn't tell he was nervous at all. He ran Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear, and yeah, he was absolutely awesome. So proud of him.
I do the tactical reload in MGS3, and I feel like I've accomplished something. So that's my little addition to that.
Oh yeah, every time I do the gun spinning with the Colt, I feel like, oh my god.
Yeah, sign me up. Where's my GDQ invite?
Apache had also humored us clearing out some RE5 boards. I don't know where that came from, but I'd be down for that too. Not related to Metal Gear.
Let's learn the. Does anyone want to watch me and Chelsea do co-op Resident Evil 5 speedruns? That sounds like fun.
I would watch that.
Yeah.
But who would win?
Me. I mean, I don't. Who knows? It's me.
I'm not even gonna argue with that.
Somebody didn't exactly win at GDQ. I know there's that what was it, a recorded segment run or something, Apache?
Yeah, so one of the runners was running Rising, and it was a remote run. So they do a few remote runs for people. Obviously,
Fox died.
still around. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to edit that out now. I said it. There's the thing still around, so they let a certain number of people do remote runs. It's very prestigious to do a remote run because it's so heavily contested, right? You can imagine, like, not everyone can go to the event, but anyone can sit in the bedroom and play a game on stream. So the Rising runner, they did their full run of the game, and then there's like an 8-minute run of the Blade Wolf DLC. And rather than do the run, they played a video of a perfect run that they had made, like a multi-segment run. So it wasn't even like a single segment run that they did previously. It was a spliced run, and they played it, and then they made some sort of weird speech at the end. I don't really want to get too much into the speech, but they were basically trying to make some kind of point about how it's not all about world records.
Yeah, it kind of is, though, isn't it?
He had his solidest moment.
Yeah.
His solidest moment.
They were definitely trying to make a point about something, but anyway, you're not allowed to do that. Obviously, no one. If you go to GDQ, people expect to see you play the game in that moment, and I think a lot of the joy of GDQ comes from seeing people do really well, but it also comes from seeing people deal with adversity. One of the first runs I ever saw was Jaguar King running MGS3. And he had plenty of mistakes in that run, and he was having a bad time, but it was still really cool to see a person playing the game that well. It wasn't some like multi-segment spliced run that he'd put together ahead of time. And anyone can watch these multi-segment runs whenever they want. They can watch them on YouTube. If that's what you're looking for, you can do that. But people came to see you play, and people paid money because it was an incentive. I'm not sure how many thousands of dollars it was, but I'm sure it was a substantial amount of donations that went to see him do this. And it's just, more than anything, it's just so bizarre that someone would do this. It's so weird. It wasn't like they were trying to cheat to get on the leaderboard and get first place or anything. They already had world record. Strange turn of events. And I said today, like, I'm sick of, I hate when bad news comes out about Metal Gear. Like, do you remember when Boba Skip got found, how hype everyone was, how much of a good time everyone was having?
Yeah.
And now this crap, like, I hate it, man. I really do hate it.
Dude, between this shit and the Final Fantasy 14 billboard, like, my fandoms are not feeling good right now.
Final Fantasy 14 having a normal one right now.
Yeah, I do appreciate the well, both communities have been kind of just like very, I don't want to say self-reflective, but they've been very like holding down the fort, doing their due diligence, like, this isn't us, guys, like, so yeah, it is what it is, and it's very strange. Yeah.
When the news broke about it, I just spent like 12 hours just kind of pacing around my house thinking about it, like, what the fuck is going on? Why has this happened? It's so weird. And yeah, I just hate that that's how this GDQ will be remembered for Metal Gear, and not Lime's getting a rank 1 run like with Game Over if Discovered. Like, it's unbelievable that someone could play that well under that much pressure.
I agree.
So somebody played the game at their house, presumably like messed up on parts and then just edited them out with like they spliced in portions, and then they went to GDQ and paid to like see a TV of the video or something.
Yeah, which one of you made the comment that he Billy Mitchell'd it?
That was me.
That was a great. that was great.
I'm gonna take credit.
Oh,
that's what really happened.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Billy Mitchell. Like they did their normal run of Rising, so the full game run of Rising. Nothing about that was docked. They were playing the game, and then when it came to their incentive, which was an additional run of the Blade Wolf DLC, they already had a pre-recorded spliced run of like world record quality, and they played it on the stream and pretended to play and commentate.
Oh, okay.
It's like playing a pre-recorded mixtape, like when you're like, I'm a DJ, and you just like press play on a pre-recorded thing. It sucks.
Did he like hold his controller close to the mic? So he's like, "Look, guys, I'm really playing."
I mean, it's still on YouTube. You can watch it. Like, some people have re-uploaded it. Like, when you know and you watch it, you're like, oh, this is obvious. But I mean, no one knew until he posted about it in the Rising Discord, and they were like, you better go tell GDQ right now, or we will.
So he did it to make a point then. So like he wasn't found out. He just came clean before it even was discovered. He just owned
Yes.
it and was like, I did it because X.
Yeah, what happened was, because it was world record, the Rising community wanted to put it on the leaderboard, and he didn't want it to go on the leaderboard, and so they had a back and forth of, we're putting it up there anyway, kind of thing, blah, blah, it's the world record, it needs to go on the leaderboard, and so he said, oh, it was spliced anyway, kind of thing. Because if it had gone on the leaderboard, and it was a cheated run, now it's like a bigger thing, because you've submitted a cheated run to speedrun.com. Because right now, he can, as far as I'm aware, he can still submit runs to speedrun.com. None of his records are in question, although I'm sure they're being looked at more closely, being re-looked at. But
Just like Billy Mitchell.
I mean, if you cheat, it's so ridiculous to say this because this should never happen. But if you play a faked run at GDQ, you get banned from GDQ, but you don't necessarily get banned from speedrun.com.
Right, yeah, those are different organizations.
But if it had been submitted to the leaderboard, now you've broken their
Oh,
rules too.
jeez. Well, I'm sorry that sort of put a negative light on you guys.
I mean, yeah, it's just so weird. It's surreal. I'm sure it'll be talked about forever.
Well, he's an Exxon of history now, so I guess in that way he got what he wanted out of his solidest motivation.
I think scholars will be working forever trying to work out what he actually wanted.
So I guess between him and the GDC rulebook, he lost in a fight?
Oh my goodness.
Was that too much of a stretch?
No, that was good. I liked it.
You've already used your one.
Oh, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep taking them every chance I get until we get deep into this.
Lord have mercy.
Well, Crisis, I'm going to ask you, what sort of started you doing this? I mean, like, look, everybody in the world has had a who would win in the fight conversation.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
there's not a single person who hasn't had some variant of that conversation. It's like part of human culture at this point. So,
Yes.
but you kind of made that your thing, and sort of took it and ran with it. So what sort of led you down that path?
Well, I certainly wasn't the first person to do it. I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to work with some of the people who inspired me, so I guess I don't know how much of a story I want to present, but funnily enough, with Kojima and Dragon Ball now kind of at least for now being on the same everybody's tongue, grew up being a fan of Dragon Ball, and as Fingers knows, I know he knows. Dragon Ball is a very combat oriented. Most shonen are typically structured in a way where power, combat, who's better than the other, a more powerful villain has to keep showing up. And it was around when the latest Dragon Ball series came out that a few YouTubers started to really hit it big with sort of analyzing the power of those characters and pitting them against one another and doing a different type of analysis than you'd see before. People would bring up things like logical razors, and try to build an argument in a way that not many people had heard. And so being a fan of that, and then there were other channels who sort of took that same approach, were inspired by that and did it to, say the Marvel movies or the DC movies. Metal Gear had always been pretty much my favorite thing. And in spite of being fans of those other things and things like Star Wars, Metal Gear was kind of always something that, it's a pretty popular series, but I had never known or talked to anybody, which is why I'm so excited to do this show. I had never really talked to anyone who had even any of my YouTuber friends, they haven't played any of the games. And it's only with things like Rising that they, with the whole sort of meme boom of that, are discussing it, which hurts my heart. But in taking that same approach that I'd seen other people do, I made videos out of it, and I've been making videos in a certain form or fashion for kind of as long as I can remember. But in sort of imitating them and then trying to put my own spin on it. And then, applying the same method to other franchises that I feel like don't get that same attention or are appreciated in a certain sense. Because Metal Gear is very much appreciated and has been analyzed in terms of the story, gameplay, meta narrative. Those things I think have been expressed and talked about, and everyone kind of understand. Even if you haven't played the game, so like, yeah, they, the game sort of set a standard for cinematic, blah blah blah. But I didn't feel like, I thought that was an interesting approach. Conversations like that compelled me, and so yeah, from there I just I've been looking. I mean, the 3 initial videos I did on my channel, which were covering the 3 protagonists, I marked them as old recently because I want to do updated versions of that, because about the time that I made those compared to now, I'd probably say that's like 20% of a knowledge base compared to what I have now, which is just looking through, like buying some of these Japanese guides, using translation software to get a crude understanding, talking to all these guys that you guys know on Twitter who are bilingual or understand the context, and then just going through archive.org and finding interviews and the old websites with official character descriptions, story descriptions, and like the novelizations, Kojima interviews, just trying to find as much information as I can, and then present this topic in a way that I at least think at the very least an iota more evolved than those playground conversations about Batman versus Spider-Man or something like that, at least in the way that they're
right. Like if you took it
presented.
to its logical conclusion, if you actually ran the numbers, like where would this actually go through?
Yes,
It's not
You,
just
you brought the receipts, if you will.
exactly.
Rather than 2 nerds fighting in a hallway about it, they both go home and independently research every
Yes.
single thing the characters have ever done and present their arguments at the end rather than in a back and forth. I like it. The example I used when we were talking earlier was like when people talk about who would win between Tyson and Ali and the Prime. That's what it reminds me of. That's a conversation I've had many times. So
right.
yeah.
You had mentioned you kind of go through all these sources, both that are more of like canonical, so folks who are translating the actual story, to interviews, but also actually doing some academic research for that era, presumably for characters like the boss or Big Boss or anybody from an era that we can kind of track, right? So I guess my question to you is, with all that considered, like especially with Metal Gear, it's such an historical fiction, if you could like break down a percentage of how much of that comes from the game, its lore, and particularly its more bombastic aspects or more supernatural aspects compared to perhaps like more historical information, what type of technology or available of weapons that they had during the time of Snake Eater,
Right.
Things like that.
Well, that's a good question, because there kind of is a specific answer. So I think it's in, and I have the physical version of this. It's MGS3, the Countdown, I think it is. And Kojima talks in it, and he's talking about the Fox unit. And the example he gives, I think, is like one of their guns or something was made in 1960 something, and the game is set in 1964, but it's in a later era. And Kojima says it's as if these guys are from the future, like they come in with these anachronistic technologies. And Kojima even also said, I think it was GameSpy.com. I'm going to try to sound as smart as I can by citing all these things. But I think it was GameSpy in like 2004. They asked him if CQC was, something that had been researched, if they were going to use martial arts, if they'd gone back and seen like how would somebody fight in the 60s. And he was like, no, I want it to look interesting. I want it to look new. I want it to look engaging. So he was using cutting edge fighting disciplines that he had gotten from Mato Satomori. So to be honest, very little I'd say is contemporary to the time in terms of what they were looking at. They kind of, because even like the Davy Crockett that they used at the start of MGS3, which obviously has a historical precedent, for whatever reason, I don't know why they did it, but Sigint in MGS3 says that the boss wasn't, he's like, the normal Davy Crockett's like 20 kilotons, whatever, but she was actually using a hyper mega experimental Davy Crockett, which is even more powerful. And so, as much as I can gather, either just to being compelling or unique, or not to be archaic, they kind of, when it comes to like the period piece games, disregard whatever was around and relevant at the time for newer, more fantastical concepts.
Gotcha, that makes sense. So it sounds like the creative direction, like you used the better term than I did, the achronistic elements of it definitely sort of answer the question for you about how much you should use, historical reference to that, and that end is not that much at all.
Yeah, and they make blanket statements as well that kind of like the boss has been stated for her time to just be the best soldier ever, warrior of all time. And so at that point, it's like, and I've thought about, because I've done it a little bit when they cite specific units. Like in the Darkness of Shadow Moses, they say that Foxhound was better than Delta Force and like the Black Hawks or some unit I had never heard of. And because of that, I had looked into, actual what had they done? What are they, and it was like their tier 1 counterterrorism. And so there's little instances where I can look into that, but mostly it's there's not a huge point in doing so, because they just say those blanket like, okay, well, if somebody were to want to argue with me or do a debate and be like, oh, this certain historical figure or this unit at the time is better or worse, I'm just like, well, the boss was just said better than everybody, so like it's not super good to go through all like the real world minutia, I guess.
So how does something like Metal Gear's meta narrative play into this? So, for example, considering the fight between Solid Snake and Liquid Snake, on paper, Liquid Snake would win, but sort of the point of the story in MGS1 is that Liquid was sort of a prisoner to his own fate. Right. And even though Snake was technically the weaker of the two, he came out on top. So there's always this sort of like who has the stronger will, who is kind of playing to the theme of what we're talking about aspect to it. So how much of that do you take into consideration?
As much as I can when it applies to, because I mean that's a good example, and I have given thought to that. What's interesting about the Solid and Liquid example, and it's kind of true for a lot of the final bosses, a lot of the like, because like you have Naked Snake, who the boss encounters him throughout MGS3, but she's obviously just far superior throughout most of their, and he's getting better as the game goes along. But she's not having to like break a sweat for the most part, whereas Naked Snake has to fight the Cobra unit, who are the greatest the absolute best forces that exist at the time, who all have weird X-Men superpowers. He has to fight Volgan, who can shoot 10 million volts. He gets tortured by Volgan, and then at the end of this marathon, he has to encounter the boss, who hasn't really been doing anything near as much, as strenuous, as difficult. And the same is true for Solid Snake. Liquid, he shot down those whatever the fighter jets, not physically taxing. And then he has he gets shot out of the high and he parachutes, and so on and so forth. But what's interesting about the Solid example, Solid versus Liquid, is again, Solid has been running this whole marathon, being tortured, being shocked by Ocelot, fighting all these dudes, and Liquid is not really done near as much. But so, and the Yano novels, he went by the pen name Nojima. I translated those through artificial intelligence and all these other things, and usually if it's something super like important to me, I'll get that fact checked by somebody who speaks the language. But that he was in contact with Kojima the whole time. He said during the Peace Walker novel that Kojima was essentially a co-editor of the thing, or a co-writer, because of how involved he was with it. And in the MGS1 novel, he says, Snake is so wounded. I think it's something to the effect of, he's their equal at this point because Snake is so beaten up and battered. But to the point of the meta narrative, you said it yourself with the willpower thing. That's a thing that pretty much all of the games say. The boss says it. She's like, technique is something that you can teach, but that's not even important. The most important thing is spirit. And then Raiden in MGS2 says, you can't get through this with just training alone or whatever. He says it has to be something higher, pure will. And so the meta narrative is definitely important, but at the end of the day, these are two guys fighting, and I kind of just have to take it for what it is. Whether you think Liquid is morally weaker or stronger or conceptually more durable, it really, you have Snake who's super fatigued at this point, fighting a much less so Liquid, and is still able to beat him at the end of the day. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Or what about like, I guess this sort of just kind of plays into the same concept of the interpretation in MGS3 that the boss and potentially even the Cobras were all pulling their punches.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially at Peace Walker when he says that, she put down her gun.
In the end, she put down her gun. And when she did, she rejected her entire life up to that point, including me.
What do you mean?
In giving up her life, she abandoned everything she was as a soldier.
Yeah. I have I've definitely looked into that because to me, so there's two things. When you consider, because is it fair? This is exciting to me. So is the reason why most of you, besides the Peace Walker thing, would it be you would attribute the boss holding her punches to the end of she can't bring herself to kill Naked Snake? Because obviously she's fine with pummeling him and attempting to like stab him, in their fights.
I don't really have a horse in the race, if I'm being honest. It's just an interesting thought experiment because if you consider it, her mission was to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was just writing out her mission, which happened to be pull your punches and don't kill this guy that has to come back. Like,
yeah, I mean that.
If you come back, people are going to be pissed.
Right, but her attitude during the fight was like, "I'm going to put my all into this." So I mean, it could really go either way.
Yeah.
Well, so the analogy that I like to use is look at like a UFC fight or UFC fighters. They're trying to win. Absolutely, they're giving it their all and trying to win. They're using their techniques. They're hitting as hard as they can. But they're not like trying to rip your head off. They're not going to get you in a headlock and decapitate you or, do any of these techniques that are inherently lethal, but they're hitting as hard as they can. They're moving as fast as they can. They're using their utmost. And as well, this is not necessarily meta narrative, but it's more so just how the characters are thinking. The boss does this whole speech. She's moving herself to tears. And then she says, let's make this the greatest fight of our lives. To me, and again, this is just like, this isn't like a primary argument I would make, but everything, I think that character would reign really hollow if in that moment you thought she was just like, I don't know, lying or something, that she has the capacity to move herself to tears and has all this. And I think the argument as well can easily be made that because she knows she's dying, because she knows she has to die, she's going to give it her all, she's going to die either way. There are already bombs coming. But yeah, I mean, to the point, talking about the Yano novels, the boss just, I think it's just stated the boss is like going all out. Like they pretty, which is good for me. I love when it's super explicit, but yeah, that's something that is explicitly, and as well, the piggyback guide for MGS3 uses the it's like a military idiom, give no quarter and ask no quarter, or no quarter taken. And I have friends and family who are in active service, and looking into the definition of that as well pretty much means giving no mercy and asking for no mercy. And the piggyback guides, the MGS5 one is like 100% authoritative, got this information from Kojima, like Kojima Productions. Kojima has like quotes in all of them. In MGS3, the guide specifically says they got like insider information from, like exclusive information from the staff, which I've never seen. I've never seen that statement in another guide, so I figure that is more than likely what it is supposed to be. But
It'd be really funny though if the boss just sort of won anyway and was like, "Shit, now what?"
Yeah. Just here come the nukes. Like they're just gonna bomb us anyway.
Guess I'll just die now.
Yeah, like
That is so fucking nihilistic.
I guess peace is achieved. I mean, sure, but yeah, and then the Peace Walker. I think because Peace Walker. It's that game's a weird game. It's a weird game for me.
It is.
It's so weird, and I think because what I try to do is I try to look at when I ask these questions, is I try to take the saga holistically, because a lot of them have the theme, like I mentioned before with the boss and Raiden, the boss, all saying these things that spirit's most important. You need, and then the solid example as well, which I think the Yano novel also says. Also backs that up with like willpower being the most important thing in a fight. But so the whole series, you look at MGS2 and they're like, you can't recreate a person through like, it needs to be a tangible experience to turn somebody. I mean, even Big Boss in MGS4 says it's never been done. Nobody's ever been able to turn someone else into another person. And obviously the Patriot AI is meant to express the boss's will, but it's corrupted. Obviously, it's not viable. It's not you can't do that. And in the MGS3 novel, they say that when the Peace Walker drowned itself, is drowned a word? Drown itself?
Yeah.
Everybody was shocked. Strangelove, like they couldn't understand it because killing yourself was specifically not in the Snake Eater imperative. And that code had been removed intently, because they were trying to replicate what was her final thoughts was Strangelove's idea. So she had gotten rid of suicide as something that the AI pod could do. And then as well they say like it was never really the boss. So and then also the game, Big Boss is having these like dreams that it's the end of MGS3, but it's dialogue from the start. And I think that game is, at least to me, it comes across as the point. It's just another expression of you can't recreate somebody and it's never going to be accurate. And as well, if Big Boss really knew what the boss was thinking, there wouldn't be this big misinterpretation, I think. But again, that's all. To me, I just have a blanket statement that says she went all out and I'm comfortable with that. But, that's all that other stuff is obviously hyper interpretive and subjective.
It just seems like such a good time to such a short time to get good. Like, 'cause she's just big boying him the whole time, just like slamming him around.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep it within the game, the narrative of the video game, right? If you're telling that story, like time has to be compressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, he sleeps twice. It's over 3 days, right?
August 30th to September 2nd. I think I looked at this recently. I'm not just some Rain Man. But yeah, I mean, and that's another thing as well. It is a short time, but even the boss at the end, as you're fighting her, as most Metal Gear bosses have like dialogue while you're fighting them, and the boss will say things like you've gotten stronger, your skills improved. And then you have examples like Ocelot, who is able to go from, in less exposure, rather, he gets dominated by rusty, I've been a Green Beret for so long, I don't remember CQC that well, Naked Snake at the start of the game. And then by the end of the game, he just beat the boss, whether you think it was, was she doing 90%, 95% of her effort? I would say all of it, but, and then he performs pretty well, and there are guides that say he can adapt. There are guides that say he perfected his own form of CQC just by watching Big Boss do it. So, and that's why I kind of, I've been writing a script that's just it goes through every game in chronological order and just covers everything. And I've been saying like, this is more like Marvel comics than like Jason Bourne, that's the territory that Metal Gear is operating in.
Yeah, I'm starting to think these games aren't that realistic.
Yeah.
you used the term like he's like city level powerful. I thought that was pretty cool. So that just just able to destroy a whole city. That was recently on the Boba Fett versus Snake video.
I imagine, yeah. So that too, though, people get mixed up on that because there's a distinction between area of effect, which to use Dragon Ball as an example, Frieza can do a giant energy ball that is as big as a planet.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Naked Snake can't do things like that. They don't have the range to do that. But behind their strikes or the amount of energy their body can withstand is in proportion to things that would be necessary to lay waste to a city.
Yeah.
I would never propose that Solid Snake could front kick a city away, but maybe someday. I'm not opposed to the idea personally, but
I have a weird question for you because this comment has been hitting my mind ever since you started.
Go for it.
Does your statement, Peace Walker is a very strange game, does that align or have anything correlate with anything that you said about earlier about Portable Ops being canon?
Oh, we're getting into it, huh? I was waiting to see how long. It would take.
Hold on, let me dial up the snake soup here.
I'm not trying to be like confrontational, I'm just, I just want to get the full context because this has been a bunch of he said, she said, and I just want to get this straight.
Peace Walker is a weird game in and of itself. I mean, there's like, and again, to the point of, I think these games are not very realistic.
That's the game that takes it to a whole nother fucking level.
Yeah,
before Rising is considered. That's just like, okay, wait, he can just like lift up that machine with his shoulders.
Yes.
It's like, okay, simmer down.
And there's like dialogue, like every time Big Boss can do that, people are reacting to it. It's not some like non sequitur. Like Kaz will call in and be like, "Oh my god, what'd you just do?" And Paz will react if you catch Zeke, and the boss AI will react if you catch Peace Walker's leg. But there's also the cutscenes where he just goes to Monster Hunter World, and it's like, okay, if you take the position that these games are wholly realistic and they are stealth, they're like, I don't know, they're Rambo type things, then I think there's such a larger preponderance of evidence where it's like, is it really that much crazier to say that there are giant monsters than, teleporters in the 80s or giant mechs in the 60s and so on, et cetera, et cetera. That's another thing too that I wanted to talk about, as to subtly skirt the Peace Walker or Portable Ops subject.
We'll get back to that.
Okay, all right.
It'll be in the back of my mind, don't you?
So the Nano Machine thing, because I have tried to come to grips with this myself, and for. Everybody's talked about it. Nano Machines, they take the mystique out of the series in a way. Obviously, there are exceptions, but people point to like Mantis and Vamp. They're the biggest examples, I think. But I've always been like, okay, sure. Before there was no explanation, now there is one. But is it really that much less fantastical that like, okay, Vamp is like a mutant, is like what we were led to believe at first. He's just some freak, like Pliskin says. Is it really that much more fantastical that that's the case than somebody made a smaller than a blood cell size machine that can turn someone into a mutant? Is it less? I don't know. I've always figured that they're probably just as implausible and mystical or whatever. But
I would be devastated if Vamp's bisexuality was because of Nano Machine.
Oh my goodness.
The Nano Machine thing is a symptom, I think, of a deeper problem with Metal Gear Solid 4.
Right.
And stop me if you've heard this from me before. So this is sort of a personal taste thing, but I really enjoy ambiguous,
yes.
specifically ambiguity in storytelling when it's calculated. One of my favorite examples is, honestly, and I know it's trite, but Final Fantasy VII. The ending to that game where it fast forwards 500 years and you see Red 13 with his offspring. And you look over the edge of the cliff and you see Midgar overgrown, and it's left to the player's imagination as to whether or not the planet decided that humanity deserved to live or not. So it's, the ending is very optimistic, but it leaves sort of an open question for you to think about, right?
Yes.
And I really enjoyed that. And then Advent Children comes along and is like, nah, they're fine. Metal Gear Solid 2 is probably my favorite example in games of this. It raises more questions than it answers, far more. And in doing so, it largely serves its own message of how information can sort of lead you astray and you need to make up your own mind about things. So, the ambiguity in MGS2 is part of the message of that game. And MGS4 then comes along and undermines all of that. Now, I get that it does it with sort of a point in mind, but it's in a lot of ways the antithesis of MGS2. And it strips that game of its mystery and its meaning. And I think that's a lot of what people don't like about it, even if they can't quite articulate it.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Nano Machine thing, though, is always that specifically has always confused me. I'm like, is it less sci-fi? I don't know how you would make that. It's a mystery to me how that's plausible. The Nano Machine's giving people superpowers.
I guess. I mean, to be fair, they didn't really explain Psycho Mantis with Nano Machines, but
Well, yeah, they say it's like his nanomachines were put into Screaming Mantis, and then it gives her powers. So I guess one might extrapolate that that's the origin of the powers, if they could.
I suppose, but he was but then you go into MGSV and
right, which retcons his MGS1 origin anyway, and
On that note, and before we start, I just want to say that I haven't finished Stranger Things yet, but I'm seeing a lot of Psycho Mantis vibes with Vecna. But in either case, on the note of retcons, like, to what extent have retcons, because you mentioned, like, I labeled these videos old because I plan to update them. Is part of that because of retcons? And even with that, to what extent have retcons, especially in retcons in this series, Jesus Christ, have they, affected your calculations, so to speak?
I would say less so. The reason why those videos I consider outdated is because of retcons, because those videos came out by the time Phantom Pain had already released.
Sure, yeah.
But it was just more so I've learned a lot more. I've just found a lot more information and can either articulate my points better or have new points that sort of reaffirm what I believed and just new information wholly. But trying to think of a specific retcon that I can say there's one thing that surprisingly hasn't been retconned that has helped I guess support a picture potentially when I make my future video, which is Madnar in Metal Gear 2. He somehow, Madnar, this scientist, this old Einstein looking motherfucker, is able to come up from behind Snake and choke him to the point where dialogue is like, I can't breathe. And Snake, the only way to get past that section is to remote control Nikita 14 missiles into the dude's back. And there has never been, there's outside of headcanon, there's nothing saying he's like a robot and he lives until MGS4. He's fine.
Rebuttal. Have you ever played the game Tekken 3?
No, but I'm interested to hear this.
There's a character in Tekken named Dr. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Banoxovich. I can't pronounce Russian names very well. It's a thing with the show. But he's like an old man. Kind of looks like Dr. Madnar without the mustache, and you can like whoop his ass, whoop ass on Tekken with him. I'll pull up a YouTube video.
I mean, unironically, Dr. Madnar would probably solo a lot of other fictional verses just based on the fact that he can kind of restrain Solid Snake for a minute.
So I'll tell you what. I'm gonna send you this video. It's in live chat. It's gonna be the channel above. I want you to take a quick look at this while we're talking, and this is gonna be my versus pass. Dr. Madnar versus Dr. Banoxovich.
All right, I'm looking. You got Lee over here. Oh my god, 20 seconds in. Okay, he starts the fight on his back. That's beast mode. He gets his guard down.
It takes a bit of time to get used to him. He controls a bit weird.
Okay.
Is he like the Voldo of Tekken 3?
I would say, yeah, that's a very close comparison. Like they both are very like unpredictable with their movements.
God, that Madnar thing bugged me so much. Did you ever hear the data mined codec conversation that somebody found? Yeah, for the longest time before I had heard that, I was thinking to myself, all right, maybe it's just a coy little Easter egg and maybe it's a relative or something. Like it's not really Madnar. And then that comes out and I'm like, oh, son of a bitch, it's actually him. Like what
because it implies he died in
right? And then he's like, oh, by the way, sorry, dude.
Dr. Madnar offered Sonny and Naomi his full support. He's going to lend them a dialysis machine. No charge.
Good to hear.
I hear you saved the doctor and his little girl back at Outer Heaven.
Yeah, I remember that.
Always good to help others. That reminds me, Madnar wanted me to tell you, his daughter Ellen is married now. Kids, too. 3 of them. One more thing. He said to tell you he's sorry.
Yeah.
He's strong. I don't know what to tell. That's one of those things where they'll be like, nah, man, that feat is that's just some outlier. I'm like, bro, I didn't make these. I didn't write this game. I didn't. This isn't me. You're shooting the messenger here. Madnar is just Madnar, and you gotta respect that. But yeah, I guess in a way that is a retcon days that Madnar was supposed to have been killed from that, but survived into 2014. So
man, but be glad you were not around in the late 90s, early 2000s for this stuff, because on the subject of like guides being informed by Kojima and having insider information, there was for the longest time this MGS1 strategy guide,
the mission handbook, official mission handbook.
Yes, and Kojima was reviewing the writing for that. They were sending it back and forth, and everything was checked and official. And even though they were sort of adding their own things, Kojima was like saying, "Yeah, this works. We can keep this. This is right." And then over the years, sure enough, it just sort of got overwritten by the games, and that used to be like the Bible for Metal Gear, where like debates were won or lost over what that book said. And now it's you might as well just forget about it.
Yeah, I've tried to be very careful in looking into those things, and I think it's interesting that because I came into the series pretty much it was already in the kind of state it's in right now was when I took this approach. And so I think it's interesting that I'm looking through these archive.org websites and old magazine interviews, and that you were there for the front lines. That was something I was looking forward to talking about is instances like that where you can cite things like that with the mission handbook. But yeah, I got that screenshot. I think it was Bad Humans who dug it up from some website that said it was approved by Kojima. But yeah, that's something that I definitely have to look at. But then also too, I think people, when it comes to analyzing the series, they're a little unforgiving when it comes to things like that, where some little thing will be retconned, and I think that's mostly due to when I get the sense, because I try when. Just doing what I'm doing and trying to scrub as deep into the bottom of the barrel as possible. Like, I'm looking at E3 pamphlets of like, oh, wow, they call MGS4 the most intense mission in the series yet. Let me get that. I need that. you know, I'm looking at things like that. So lost my train of thought, but yeah, I think it's people when you look at it at that granular level, and then you have other people doing it. It's most likely that's the only thing they can dedicate that enough time to. And so they kind of exist in this echo chamber where, for me, I take a similar approach. I don't think I've done it as deep a dive as I have with Metal Gear, but I look at other communities and they're much less. You know, it's like, okay, sure, this guide said something about Gray Fox or something about Mantis, but like, you're really going to throw the baby out with the bathwater because Kojima changed one thing in a game 20 years later? Like, the whole thing's wrong now? Like, I've always been like, that's a little bit silly to me. Like, there's still some relevant things, I think, in the mission handbook, more or less. I'm trying to think of something specific.
While you're thinking, I do think it's funny that you do take in marketing into the situation.
Yeah.
Because marketing, marketing has this hyperbole to sell you on it. And you were like, yeah, MGS Forces, it's the toughest mission ever. Like,
yeah, well, again, I try to look at the whole thing, and if there are things that I think don't make sense with the whole, I do say, all right, this probably isn't consistent, and I have obviously, to me, the ultimate end all, what everything has to adhere to is the games itself. Any source, any piece of material I get to, if it doesn't align with the games, at least in their current form, with all retcons accounted for, then again, I won't throw out a whole guide if one thing's wrong, but I'll say, that one thing probably doesn't hold up.
Right.
Well, like, what about like games like, like with Twin Snakes, like where it's like, is this necessarily like the canon, or is this kind of just like extra, or?
Well, MGS1, I feel like is the RE4 of Metal Gear games, and I mean that in the sense where it has been iterated and reiterated upon. You have the graphic novel, you have the motion graphic novel, you have Twin Snakes, you have Into the Darkness of Shadow Moses, you have obviously the original version. And Kojima, so when the Legacy Collection came out, he bundled in the motion comics of MGS 1 and 2. And this, I think, is the most, how I would use this. Like, it's a good utility, it's a good example. He said that he put those on there so that if modern day players couldn't handle the ancient archaic hieroglyphic control scheme of MGS 1 and 2, that they could watch the motion comics and get the story. Now, obviously, there are some deviations there between the comic and the original games rather. But the way I look at it to where it makes some kind of sense is I'll use the example of like Raiden at the end. And obviously in the main game, Raiden beat Solidus. In the comic, Solidus kind of throws Raiden aside, and Snake comes in and one-shots him, just stabs him through the chest and says a one-liner. The way I interpret that is Kojima is kind of saying in a way, if that were to happen, if Raiden were to lose, Snake would come in and would be able to effectively deal with the problem. He would be able to perform at this level. Yeah. And Twin Snakes is a weird example too, because I don't know what event it is. If Nitro, if you know, it would be of some use to me. I'd be interested. But it's Kojima and some other people in Kojima Productions. They're at a panel, and there's the it's breaking down, like, you have MGS 1, 2, 3, Subsistence, and then it says like Gaiden and uses acid, Ghost Babel in one bubble, and then it says Metal Gear Solid, and then under that in quotations or in colons, it says the Twin Snakes. And I don't know what event that is.
I remember that.
Yeah.
But what's funny, and this is sort of a you can say it's either a bug or a feature with Kojima, is that he will, change his own writing and his own facts from moment to moment to suit whatever it is he's trying to do. And Twin Snakes was sort of ignored past a certain point. So, but I do remember, I do remember there was a lot of early sort of, I don't want to say acknowledgement, but insinuation that the Twin Snakes was sort of supplanting the original. But
yeah, you have that slide. You have MGS4, which uses kind of cutscenes and imagery from both. Obviously, the nature of the dub favors the sort of twin, and that was like a Konami directive that they get rid of the accents in Twin Snakes and then maintain that in 4. And then also an interesting one. And this is why I love all these guys on Twitter. In 4, I think it's in the Fox hallway. Snake's walking down that, and I forget exactly in what aspect of it, but it is. I think it's because all these flashbacks are supposed to be like Snake memories or something, and they added on a scene. They extended that scene in the Twin Snakes, and so in the audio that they use for that hallway, it is dependent upon Snake having seen it. I think, which he only sees it in Twin Snakes, the like slaughter that's happening in the hallway.
If I could offer a counterpoint to this,
let's hear it.
It's I think crucial to consider the Japanese version of Metal Gear Solid 4 here, because it does not.
They use the original audio. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
But here's the tricky part. The audio for Twin Snakes in Japan was the original. They didn't have to re-record it. They only re-recorded the English dialogue.
Right.
So what you have is sort of a contradiction here. So the top, if you will, I would call this the tiebreaker. When there are flashbacks, visual flashbacks, they are of MGS1. They are not of Twin Snakes.
Right. But it's interesting because it's like, okay, those flashbacks are like, obviously, they're kind of an omniscient, like they're like a button prompt, and they're kind of like, obviously, they're not things that the characters have seen. They're like impressions of what they've done, and it's more so to the audience's point, as well as those like slideshow, sequences where they will use Twin Snakes visuals. And for me, Twin Snakes is like, I think because what people are like, oh, Snake does things in Twin Snakes that he could never do in the other games, I think is kind of the impression. And again, because there's many reasons why people wouldn't want that to overridden the original, and I'm not going to act like Metal Gear Solid 1, the original, isn't a superior version. But there's really nothing. The best thing I think that Twin Snake would offer from my perspective, is we get to see some of the fights. Because in like the original, you just press circle and then Fox, like the cutscene starts where he's already been defeated. But in Twin Snakes, you kind of see that play out, which I think is interesting. The novel also provides that, and I think the novel is more probably like a Kojima, if that was your barometer of canonicity or whatever, that would be more in favor, and we do get to see kind of how the fight plays out in that as well. But the like backflipping over a missile and that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe in an acrobatics, like Snake does flips in the original. People do acrobatic stuff.
The common, answer to this question, if you want to call it an answer, it's more like a recurring joke at this point, is that, MGS1 is the truth, Twin Snakes is the legend. Twin Snakes is either, it's like Otacon telling the story at a bar, is what people say.
Yeah, the only problem with that is Otacon is easily embarrassed by his own, like in MGS2, when Snake reminds him of him wetting the locker. He's like bashful about it. He's like, "Oh, come on!" Like he's very offended by that. So why would he tell that part of the story?
Well, I don't mean literally.
He drops the sniper rifle. Like I know, but like that I'm like, why would Otacon at a bar make himself look worse? Like, wouldn't he do something impressive or
two? You can think of it like you said earlier, where it's like you can kind of replace the situation and say like, okay, well, if he was in this situation, would he be able to handle it? And okay, cool, he'd probably do it this way. So
I will say that Ocelot, god damn it, I do this every week. I will say that Otacon would likely be in character for him to, like, at some point during the story, just admit that he pissed himself, like after he gets ribbed on for like 2 hours about it.
It's like an unmetal segment. They're like, wait a minute, hold on.
Yes.
Did you pee your pants?
I mean, he did tell Naomi that he was an otaku.
Yeah, but like that, he's proud of that. He wears that on his sleeve. He has anime posters up in his office and stuff. I don't know if We know he's embarrassed about pissing himself. At least we know that he's not. Yeah, I doubt he told Naomi that. I don't think that would work as well in getting the desired outcome.
This does sort of raise an interesting question, though. What do you do when there's a direct contradiction? So, I can't think of any that would necessarily impede combat, but just off the top of my head, when Liquid says that, Big Boss was in his late 50s when he was cloned, and in the canon, it happens in the early 1970s, which puts him, no older than 40.
Yes. I would have to check the novel again to see what it says. I don't remember what it says exactly. I have a Google Doc that is just the rough, because obviously it's translated, it's not localized. And if I were to try to spread this, because I've seen other people, the MGS5 novel, someone has, it's not, I promise, man, Cheyenne on Twitter, I was refreshing that thread every day to get something new of that novelization. But somebody went,
we love you, Shaine.
But somebody went and did the whole thing, and they had done that. They'd used the localized lines, but I would have to check to see exactly what it says in that case. But I'm pretty sure that would have been fixed. But I think that's probably that's for better or worse. That's just a Mantis thing as well. That's just another example of because it wasn't there in the manual of Metal Gear 2. They had a whole different backstory for Big Boss. And I'm pretty sure they said how he lost his eye in a certain in a different war or something. I'm pretty sure I might be misremembering, but
I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff. There's some stuff that you can sort of headcanon your way around, like Miller having a daughter later in life.
Right. Yeah, he adopts or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I've always Miller's from 1984 until 99. I really want to get Miller's headspace because, he's vengeful in 84. He's I'm going to train in this, this is my territory. He's I'm going to train Solid Snake the best I can to kill Big Boss. But then Snake, talking to Liquid, he's there's a friendship, there's a camaraderie. And then, presuming he, make a few presumptions, but assuming the art of him is somewhat evocative of how he ends up, he potentially gets new limbs, which was a big thing for him in 84. If he adopts a daughter, he goes through a very weird character arc, and I would really like to see that. And that's another thing too, in translating these novels, they add a few things that they talk about how Otacon has vague recollections of being put in Sahelanthropus, and it's implied that kind of informed the design of Rex subconsciously. And
that's cool.
There's a whole stuff like that, and there's a whole thing as well. I think Emma Emmerich has she talks a lot. She talks about they reference Huey not being able to walk, I'm pretty sure, and some other things like that. But yeah, the besides even just trying to get statements or feats or whatever, that's a cool thing in some of the novels that they provide. But to answer your question, in direct contradiction, I would probably favor whatever is more recent. And again, I look at the games as that is if something contradicts those, then I always favor what the games are, because that is the thing, that's what Metal Gear is.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's one thing too, where if we're going to talk about portable ops, I could do that because I think I have a unique perspective. But Kojima, I'll pivot to this. I'll try to, you guys are going to have to force me to talk about portable ops. Actually, I'm not going to give you guys the victory there. I'll be kicking and screaming. But because this is the Kojima frequency here, so I wanted to talk about how the power scaling, whatever perspective is, Kojima will talk about, and big things too. And I think Nitro, you'll find this interesting. Obviously, Raiden exists for many reasons. The concept of Raiden, he's a vector for the player, all these things. But another reason that Kojima expressed was Snake at this point in the series is so good, he's so proficient at his job.
Right.
That for the player to die would be in stark contrast as Snake to his skill level, necessitating Raiden to be this rookie character.
It wasn't so much that Snake would die as it wouldn't make sense for the game to give you tips over the codec.
Well, there's that, and I have that the codec thing, but there's also another statement that said if Raiden, you can't dying losing, it doesn't make sense. It contradicts who Snake is at that point.
Okay, cool. I'd like to see, I want to see that.
I can give you that. And then also the conception of Liquid Snake. Kojima was like, this is big stuff. He's saying we should have rebooted with Solid, but we didn't. And in doing that, an extension of that was, the Metal Gear, he's like, Snake fought all these tough guys in the MSX games. And so the only way that we could present him a new threat would be a clone, somebody who is, there's a reason for him to be as good as Snake is. That's that's the only plausible threat, after the MSX characters. So Venom, Snake, Big Boss. That's like a big thing. Like he's like, we didn't reboot, and so this is kind of all we're left with. And he's also said that like the bosses are supposed to get stronger as they go on, and on Twitter recently he talked about Liquid being like the final boss always needs to be the strongest character. It needs to be the strongest thing that the hero has so far had to deal with. So Kojima, I mean, he says these things too. And here's another example where I think, in a direct contradiction, Kojima has said he's at least said at times that his perspective is that as the games progress developmentally, like in terms of release order, the threats keep getting more impressive. So like what he has said is Foxhound unit is less powerful than the Dead Cell is less powerful than the Cobra unit. The problem with that is there's a concept. I just learned this today. I've been using the term, but it's called power creep. And
yes, holy shit! You've been doing this series and all into shonens and stuff, and like you just learned power creep recently. That's awesome.
Well, I've only used it for shonens. I've only used it based on under that idea. But the term I found out comes from things like Magic the Gathering, where an earlier set of cards will come out, and then they'll be rendered useless by later packs. And so as they update the game, the old meta becomes useless and outdated.
Look, Apache and I have played a shit ton of Blizzard games, regrettably, and we know a thing or two about power creep.
Right. We've seen it ruin a whole game multiple times, actually. It's like literally destroyed World of Warcraft like multiple times, and they've had to reset everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I mean, I don't like MGS4 all that much, as is apparent, but that is sort of one of the themes of the game in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. Because so that's a good point, because he does say that as well about the beauty unit, that they're the strongest. But in bringing up power creep, if you look at the series as a chronology, which obviously the games consider themselves that, they have timelines at the end of every game that place, so statements about there's a linear progression that we can look at where you have Naked Snake, and in my opinion, he surpasses the boss, and then he also dedicates himself. The guy, like the MGS5 piggyback guide said, he dedicates himself to becoming ever stronger. So he's just on some Goku shit where he's just like, I have to keep getting better. And then Peace Walker, obviously, and Portablops to another degree is like, I'm not going to willingly die. I'm not going to do what the boss did. I'm not going to do that. Which obviously, she had to die. So, and then so Solid beats him, and then you have even, Liquid having the scales to Solid, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the games chronologically as a continuum, it gets better and better as it goes on. And to that end, I would probably say that the Kojima statement just doesn't work if you consider it that. It just doesn't follow if you follow the games and the events and sort of the things that are within the games themselves. But like you said, the B&B unit, all of the villains there, and this is another thing too, where it's a perspective that you can enjoy things that you might not otherwise enjoy by looking at it in this perspective of going like, you know what? Maybe it is kind of cool that the beauties are like every villain so far combined. And Snake has like this like super suit that can help him like combat these like, composite villains, where they have like Solidus's exosuit, but it's enhanced. They say that, and also Psycho or Decoy Mantis's abilities, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I just wanted to say, because I think people would be interested to know that Kojima does think about these things, even if on certain things I think I would disagree based on the games. But it's not just some perspective that I've come in and like, try to fit a square piece in a round, hole. There is that thought process informs a lot of the series.
I'll be honest, I kind of did a crash course in your videos today, or not today, I'm sorry, this week. So this has definitely been like, yeah, this is what I did on July 4th. But this has definitely given us at least a lot of context into how those are created. So I'm going to dive back in with this knowledge and then wait for the other videos, the new Metal Gear videos to pop up.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 60 seconds to say why you think Portable Ops is canon. Go.
Okay. So in both the MGS1 Yano novels and the MGS Peace Walker Yano novel, they have endearing references to Peace Walker. They're not like, oh, let's forget that crap. They reference.
You can keep going. I'm not timing you. You're fine. You can
go. well, it's funny. In my script, I'm like, and then I'm like, I don't want to take too long on this. Like, I try to blaze through it, so it's funny. It's just practice, but yeah. So they reference how the East. They talk about in the Peace Walker when they say, because obviously they're still in South America, and it says like not far from here, Big Boss was involved in this East and West. He was like blamed for. Both of them, were coming after him. They both thought he was doing some fuck shit, which is the premise of Portable Ops. And then the piece, I think it's the MGS1 one that talks about the Portable Ops backstory for Gray Fox and how he was a child soldier. And I have I think it was either Hieitais. I never said his name out loud, but it was either him or Bad Humans. It always is. But they had posted that, and like I said in the afterword of the Peace Walker novel, he's like, I line by line the Kojima production scenario team and Kojima himself, and he goes as far to be like, he's my co-writer. He edited, he looked at all this, and would he give feedback, and also just Kenji Yano overall, he knew about the plot of MGS5 in 2011. Kojima had briefed him on, I assume the overarching story. And I think he co-wrote Death Stranding. I'm pretty sure he wrote the novels for it at least. So there are earnest references to the events of Portable Ops. And it was there also, both of those books were printed after that non-answer interview he gave anyway. So to me, among other things, like, in my opinion, when you have Portable Ops, it shows up in MGS4. I don't think,
and it's got that mention in Peace Walker, like right at the beginning too.
And like people use that. People use that to say like, oh, it didn't happen. And I understand contextually they're saying forget that game, but looking at it from a continuity perspective, it had to have happened to forget, like to leave in the past or whatever, like from the in-universe what he's talking about. But again, I understand the what people would say to that and say, well, but again, that could be for many things. It could be like the gameplay sucked, which kind of did. Like Apache,
I'll give him
that. I tried helping Apache out. I gave him the 60 frames per second hack on Portable Ops because just like him, I see the potential there, but I don't think the frame rate pushed it to that level.
I would just wish it was built with static camera, like from the start.
Yeah. I've heard you say that before. I agree.
I do really genuinely like Portable Ops as well. I can't see myself ever running it. It's got its issues, but I do think it's such a great game.
I think give it a dual analog stick, give it 60 frames per second, and put in the Fulton. And I think that's really all it needs, because dragging those guys, I can't do it. I can't do it.
I always say like I hate the Fulton, right? I hate like Fulton in stuff off. But at the same time, the alternative is just dragging people, and that's even worse. It's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I can't do it. But yeah, I mean, more or less, that's my opinion. And I understand it's very like whatever I say, whatever I put in a video, there's going to be it's really kind of moot, I think, at this point, personally. But yeah, there's you got it out of me. But I was gonna add, like, in my opinion, whether Kojima, it's in four Kojima, nothing he can say can like warp the Blu-ray data on my disc.
Yeah.
When I play that game, Portable Ops is always there. When, you know, and then there are certain things as well. Actually, on the Konami UK website, which was copywritten bottom of the page, and the only way back version I could find was as recent as 2020, but the copyright is 2017. Obviously, after Kojima would have left, and after his official sway on the continuity of the series, you know, he's, for better or worse, he's gone.
Yeah.
On that website, they have a timeline, which is the backstory of Phantom Pain. It has on there MGS3, Portable Ops, beat by beat, Peace Walker, Ground Zeroes, and Phantom Pain. And that is probably the last official timeline that we're going to get until they do something else. And it has Portable Ops on there again, beat by beat.
Yeah. It's almost like just like Kojima's way of saying, like, yeah, I probably would have done it different had I been a little more involved, but this will do. I mean, we don't have any other real information from the end of Snake Eater to Peace Walker, you know, like it does fill in a gap. So
yeah,
somehow they got all that money.
Well, so again, another controversial entry into the MGS4 data, or into the Metal Gear saga or whatever. And again, tying back into how people kind of throw out, in my opinion, the baby with the bathwater when it comes to some contradictions here and there. But the MGS4 database says that, so Big Boss got the legacy from Gene, and Gene was like, start your army with this. But if I recall correctly, the Patriots didn't exist by Portable Ops. They hadn't been formed yet. Is that right?
The database contradicts itself in several points.
Sure. But the reason I like to attribute to that is it says in there that he used the legacy to bolster the Patriots. And then I also think that kind of adds to his character kind of resenting Zero by the end of it. And he's kind of broke as a joke because he wasted all this money on Zero's obsession with whatever James Bond plots and secrecy and super weapons. But yeah, the MGS4 database, I know that's been maligned, and I know at least the contradictions they list on the wiki. And I don't think that's... Well, okay, so are you talking about the Liquid Ocelot stuff? Because I've also wanted to talk about that.
Well, it's been a while, and God, I have so many things I could say about the Portable Ops stuff you brought up.
Okay, go for it.
The Liquid Ocelot stuff is one aspect of it. I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time since I dove through the database. I love that somebody actually went to the trouble of putting the whole dang thing online.
Nice. That's a good resource. I've used that a lot looking at things.
I wish folks had put the MSX magazine online. Holy shit. I've been trying to research.
I've never heard of that. I'm going to have to find that.
It's you got to watch the recent episode with Metal Gear D Model. We go into a little bit of context there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did watch that.
Yeah, we've been trying to help him find that magazine. So
Right. Okay.
Okay, so I know, speculation is sort of the name of the game here, but we're trying to stay as grounded as possible based on what information is available and what we can actually confirm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the points you brought up, let's just back up here for a second, is that Metal Gear Solid 4 briefly displays Portable Ops.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
going by that same logic, what would you say about Ghost Babel appearing in Metal Gear Solid 2?
Oh, you mean the AI like corrupted appearance?
Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, in MGS4 they also reference Galuade in the description of the Beretta.
Mm-hmm.
The Beretta M9. That's actually a good point. I think there's probably contextually you have one instance in MGS2 that is very obviously. I I guess I would say it's parody. I'd probably say you could probably lump it in with like, okay, did any version of the Colonel actually see a flying whatever and get abducted? Did Rose actually sleep with Raiden?
Sure. But this is awfully specific.
In what way? The Galway thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I guess it's like, okay, I think again what I would say as well, because it would be like the level of reverence that they're showing to the thing that they're referencing. So, and if they're just doing a little one-off appearance, and even still, I would argue based on MGS4, there could easily have been some mission when it's some place, because the Beretta M9 references it's like Snake infiltrated Galway in the past. So there's some version of that that might not necessarily be one-to-one with the game itself, the Ghost Babel game as we understand it.
Sure, but we're headcanoning now.
Why is that?
Because, well, you can say, yeah, I could kind of wrap my head into a pretzel to have an explanation for why they would mention this thing that otherwise doesn't make any sense. On the face of it, it's just making a reference to Ghost Babel. But if the fact of a reference existing to something is in fact evidence of it having happened, then it seems like you're trying to have it both ways.
Well, let's look at, again, the context of the scene in which Portable Ops is, because Portable Ops is shown a couple times. Portable Ops is shown when Naomi's talking, and it's talking about we're seeing, it's in the context of the sequence of events that are the games themselves. And then the next time is Liquid Ocelot referencing the history of the Patriots and so on and so forth. So the context in both instances are characters within the universe expressing the past of the series, and then the developers are visualizing, giving us visualization of those things. They're saying this is the tapestry of the past as these characters are referencing it.
Metal Gear Solid 4 also goes into the fact, though, that there is a lot of misinformation and exaggeration about the past, and even as Big Mama puts it, outright lies.
Right, within the universe itself, but probably not these omniscient displays that it's kind of like the flashbacks. And so these are things that they're not within the universe itself. I mean, plenty of characters talk about that, how even in Portal Ops itself, Big Boss says that he has sort of this overblown reputation and so forth, but that's within the universe. That's not an out-of-universe thing.
I don't know if I buy that distinction, though, because Metal Gear often doesn't really respect that distinction.
Okay, can you think of an analogous example?
Yeah, I'm trying. It's because it always sort of blurs the line between in-universe and sort of what it's saying to the player. There's not really a hard line division between those two realms. So this isn't so much a narrative aspect as it is just an example. But when in Metal Gear, anytime a character tells you in order to do a thing, you must press this button on your controller, do you really think that, like, the Colonel is, do you think that Snake has PlayStation buttons on his codec or his Soliton radar? Obviously not.
He does when he's controlling the Metal Gear Mark II, funnily enough.
Which is very funny, yeah. Yes. That they've got a literal PlayStation 3 and a PSP, and there's even a house in Eastern Europe. Or Prague, right?
Yeah. Right, where they're listening, you can hear the MSX games.
Right. So, but this is sort of making my point is that there's not really a division between the extra and the inter.
Only example of that I can think is like Ground Zeroes, like where they're like, "Hey, this didn't really happen." Like these are, like the side missions.
Well, actually, some of the side missions have some canonical. There's some dialogue. It was Futura Sound who did. He had there's one of the side missions in Ground Zeroes talks about them people forming some intelligence operation, and then Kaz references it later. But I think that's interesting. But so now if we ride that logic, can you even make a
So we got body snatchers now? Is that
potentially? Yeah. Their aliens are kind of referenced all throughout the series.
Yeah.
But at that point, can you make a positive claim regarding any of it? Because because at one hand we can draw the distinction, which I think you can either say is either mildly arbitrary or it is grounding in some kind of contemporary reality. Or on the other hand, you can say it's all fiction, and there exists this fine line where there is no, like, at that point, what positive claim can you make regarding this?
Well, that's kind of my point. Is that there's not really any consistency here.
I don't know if I would agree. They reference Galuade, which again, like, they reference in other things. I think it's plausible that Snake could have gone there. But then also the Colonel Campbell is saying things. I see your point, but I think within these two instances, I think contextually they're the out of universe thing, which is the presenting the cutscenes of Portable Ops as Ocelot is recounting them. They are similar vehicles, but I think they're two totally different contexts.
Okay.
Which is
let's agree this is kind of a rabbit hole, and let's go a different way.
Okay.
So an earlier point you made is that when it comes to contradictions, you'll go with the more recent or the more the most recent information, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
if there's a direct because I think there's tiers to things. If there's a direct contradiction in the games themselves, then I would go with a recent thing. Yeah. So like if MGS5 retconning MGS1, I would have to favor the MGS, like with the Mantis thing. I would have to favor the retcon.
But not so much Kojima literally saying something.
Kojima. Well, there's one thing between like the intent of something and then the application of that thing. Because from my perspective, Kojima gave a non-answer in that interview. And
I think he does not like the term canon, is what I think he doesn't like.
Didn't you say he's like never said it? Like
he has never said the word canon.
Well, he went as far, when asked him the question, he deflected and said, "I'm not gonna say officially or not. I'm just gonna say, to me, there's a difference. To me, there are games that I made, and then there aren't. There are games that I acted on producer on. So, which is why I say it's a non-answer. If it's because to my purpose, to tie it back into the utility of whatever is to say, are the feats and scaling presented in Portable Ops valid to use in a video? And to that end, I have to go with what we have. I have to use what we have, which are these different official sources. And then Kojima, what he said, again, is a non-answer, and in fact completely shifts away from, is it officially the case or not, which is what I have to determine. That's, to me, that is my purpose. I have to purpose what is officially the case, whether Kojima thinks it or not.
I don't think it's a non-answer, but I am curious of what an example is that you have of Portable Ops shifting a debate in terms of a who would win scenario. Do you have an example of that?
Well, the boss is a very good example because Gene is like the successor. So he was, and there's guides and things that just say he was in terms of his fighting skill and so on. So, and then he's got crazy abilities. You can just see the future. He can teleport. There's the stuff with Null. Null can read muscle movements, and Big Boss is still able to fight him, similar to how Raiden is able to fight Vamp in MGS2.
I gotcha now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, when it comes to like the quality of the narrative, that's a whole other. That's not even really relevant.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, yeah, you can power scale something that's bad and it'd still be like
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you love or hate it.
It's like Galen Merrick, right? That game sucked, but he's like crazy powerful. If you look at what he's capable of.
People like him a lot. Yeah.
Weirdly, my whole issue with Portable Ops was how it sort of neutered what happened in MGS3 by saying that Volgin was acting on orders. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just some random incident that nobody could have foreseen taking things in a completely different direction. Like, I felt like that sort of robbed them of some agency. Mm-hmm. But that's not really relevant to this at all.
It seems like not liking like what Disney's doing with the Star Wars canon. It's like you had all the legends and stuff, and like now you're coming back and like rewriting over it, and it's like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can, because I love Legends. Legends is probably the other thing that I've gone the deepest into, and I could kick and moan all day about whatever they've done recently, but that's the official
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, well, like officially right now, the canon is the Disney stuff, like it or not. So
justice for Dash Rendar.
Salute. Yeah. Kyle Katarn and Dash Rendar.
Mara Jade.
Aw, Mara Jade.
We need a Revan show. That's what we need.
They're probably going to stuff them all into this Acolyte show, and it's going to be like Thrawn, where it's like, okay, kinda Thrawn, like, sure.
They should have just made the Thrawn trilogy, for God's sake.
Yeah, but they won't recast anybody. They have to use this CG, like, this disturbing nonsense
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It'll never... None of what they have done has looked good, and anybody who says otherwise is fooling themselves. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's uncanny as hell, for sure. But does it at least, because I know that this is obviously a contentious thing, and like I said, I've listened to a lot of the episodes. I know your position, Nitro, but does that at least make sense? My position, my logic?
Yes, yeah, I absolutely get where you're coming from.
Okay.
The only thing I would add, just to sort of put a bow on my position, is that when he gave his non-answer, it sort of raises this whole question that I think at some point either we or someone else is gonna dive into a little deeper, which is this notion of is it fair to equate the notion of a Hideo Kojima game with what we commonly call canon?
Mm-hmm.
Or are these different concepts that we are conflating? And that is an interesting discussion that I don't think anybody's had yet.
He thinks they're different. That's literally what he says. He says, instead of talking about if it's officially main story, I have a distinction in me that's a Hideo Kojima game, and then there's the stuff that I produced. Is how I read the statement. It's him.
That sort of runs itself in a circle, though.
That's why I'm like, I ignore it. Just get rid of it. Like that statement is nothing. Like, he said nothing. He didn't, and, but then it's like, you look at what the Yano novels are and what he said, and they're after the interview where they're referencing events from Portable Ops. And also I think too, it's like, if you look at the games, right? Let's take the same approach with like the 8-bit games. Cause, if you were to say, let's say that there was if Kojima was asked the same thing and he said the same, obviously a little bit different. If he left the door open to it not being a thing, well, let's apply what people do with Portable Ops to the 8-bit games. They go, yeah, I guess they appeared on the timeline. I guess he references Madnar. I guess, like, because what else can you do? A whole lore dump in MGS5 of like, yeah, there was this guy named Gene, and then Kaz is all exasperated the whole time. It's like, big boss.
I suppose, but I know I'm probably forgetting something because there's so much damn information in V. But to my recollection, I don't believe there's a single reference to Portable Ops in V. Is there?
People interpret, because they say Ocelot had to get the remaining part of the legacy, which which I don't think was in anything else. So I thought you were going to bring up the fact that Venom Snake says that he's like mocking the idea of ESP, which I have a counter argument for anyway. But
you can counter argument anything Venom says.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's saying it.
Exactly. Well, yeah, they say like he doesn't know what's a memory and what's a hallucination. Then also, Naked Snake was told the Sorrow had ESP, and if Big Boss is prone to like shirking that stuff off, then that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I think I know what it is. Maybe that's the unfinished content where all the Portable Ops references. That's why it's unfinished.
Okay. All right. That's the next video essay that we're all going to have to pan ourselves through. Is Portable Ops unfinished? ... I think Kojima's answer is unfinished. That's my my position.
He needs his feet held to the coals a bit.
Well, now, would it really matter? Like honestly, officially, it wouldn't matter. Which is why I think that the UK timeline is probably the closest we're ever going to get.
You said something earlier that kind of made me think of something, which, Konami is obviously going to do whatever the hell they want with this series, whether that's a reboot or a remake or Metal Gear Solid 6 or nothing at all. Who knows? But clearly they're gonna go their own route without Kojima. But it's funny. Metal Gear's in this weird place, and it sort of always has been, where it's so closely tied to Kojima, his identity, his vision, that even without him at the helm, it's still kind of his in a weird way. You know, like the car, I've made this analogy before, but like the car is parked in Konami's garage, but Kojima left with the keys and the pink slip.
Yeah, I've thought about that because, again, use Star Wars as an analogy. Nobody's asking George Lucas anything because he doesn't. It's not his to own. He doesn't. That's not. Yeah. And even like Halo's another example, because I have a brief. I like Halo well enough, but I know they had an original crew. They had people who would consider the Kojimas or whatever. I think it was a group of them, but they're like, those are the guys, the Halo guys. But the Halo guy, he left. And then Bungie made, or 343 made a few entries that you can't say are non-canon because the guy left. But then he comes back and it's a sequel to the 343 games. So now you really can't say those are non-canon, even if you were in that guy's camp of being like, but the point is I don't see, and this is why, again, I talked about how when people do this, when they dedicate so much to one franchise, it gets really insular where if you look at how, because I looked into it. I looked into the origins of canon, what decides canon, and it's really frustrating because as it is religiously, it's so there's like this, was it divinely inspired or not? And who knows what that means? So that was a waste of research.
Kojima is God, so.
Yeah, but you have that, and then but I think funnily enough, I think it's completely up to the fans because because you look at George Lucas, maybe it was because some people maligned him, some people didn't like the prequels or what he did or didn't care, and they're willing to accept the new regime more so. But then maybe it's also because there's so much more content that if you want to engage with Star Wars now, you have to concede to that. Whereas with Metal Gear, they Survive was stated outright apocryphal by that director. And then that's all we've gotten,
Survive definitely just retcons itself, so that's all good, and that's
true.
At least that does explain the portals that show up in the Phantom Pain. I do like that part of how that kind of at least ties that in. But all the wandering soldier shit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess who would win then? A graphic made by Konami saying that portable ops exists, or like a sentence said by Kojima?
If it's an old sentence that was unearthed after his interview, it would be pretty good. But as it stands now,
you put Kojima in a room with CEO of Konami, John Konami, right? Like they're sitting beside each other.
100%.
I'm John Konami.
And Kojima says it's not canon, and Konami says it is canon. Who wins?
Konami owns the thing. Konami owns it. What an interesting thing.
Do they though?
Oh my goodness,
dude! You're gonna get a lot of response comments. I'm just letting you know this.
No, I know, and it's not something people want to hear.
But yeah, if people want to find your stuff online and check out your videos where you really go into this stuff, you've got your YouTube and you're on Twitter, right?
Well, YouTube, Crisis Comics with an X, and Crisis Edits at Crisis_edits at Twitter.
Sweet, man. It's been a lot of fun. Just talking about who would win in a fight, and if all this stuff is canon, and figuring out how powerful all these characters are. It's pretty cool. I like watching these type of videos.
I need another hour.
I'm pro, by the way, just for the record. I think I'm pro Dr. Madnar, but I wanted to get your take on the video I sent you, Crisis.
Pretty good, man, but Madnar's he's the father of modern robotics. What are you going to say to that?
I mean, Metal Gear versus Jack, but like a shit ton of Jack 2s.
Yeah, that's my next video. That's you guys.
One Madnar-sized duck or 1,000 duck-sized Madnars.
I've been building my whole career up to making those types of videos. That's my long game. It's just making those AI simulations getting good enough. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks again for coming on.